He's just going to shake his head.
He knows better.
Your job is to carry it to the car.
All right, so welcome back. Happy Sunday. Happy weather day. All right, well, today is November 9th, a red letter day in history. It was on this date in 1518 that Pope Leo X defended indulgences as a treasury of merits. Indulgences were the thing that Johann Tetzel was selling, that Martin Luther got excited about and didn't, precipitated. It was a straw that broke the camel's back in the Reformation. And interestingly enough, indulgences are still a part of Catholic theology. They haven't been repudiated, I guess would be the word I'm looking for. They're still there. They're still kind of in their bank of things they can do if they wanted to pull them out. John Knox preached his last sermon on this date in Scotland. John Knox is kind of not exactly a sort of second or third generation reformer. He's responsible for the creation of the Presbyterian Church. Similarly, it was on this date in 1786 that Jedidiah Morse was ordained as a Congregationalist minister. Congregationalism is kind of the church structure that we follow here. That is where the congregation is makes the decisions. Jedidiah Morse helped create Andover Theological Seminary to counter the liberalism of Harvard. Because Harvard, by that point, which had been started in 1636, I believe, as a school to train ministers, had gone liberal by then. Today, it was on this date in 1857 that I forgot to bring it, the first issue of the Atlantic Monthly was published. The first issue of the Atlantic Monthly. I get the Atlantic Monthly. Actually, it's called the Atlantic now. I get the Atlantic Monthly. I love the Atlantic Monthly. I think it's probably one of the best magazines out there for long reads, that kind of stuff. So if you're looking for some good reading, get the Atlantic Monthly. In 1906, Teddy Roosevelt, first foreign presidential trip. First time that a U.S. president left the country during his time in office. He went to Puerto Rico and Panama. So he was there's famous pictures of him in a bulldozer in Panama, because we were building the Panama Canal right at that time. In 1923, today is the date of the Beer Hall Putsch in Germany. The Beer Hall Putsch. This was the first time that Adolf Hitler kind of appears, and he fails, and he's sent to jail and spent a short period of time. In 1938, this is the date of Kristallnacht, the night where in Germany, now Hitler is fully in power and has does a violent string of violence against Jewish-owned businesses in Germany. That took place on this date in 1938. And finally, let me just tell you, finally, it was on this date in 1989 that symbolically, not physically, but symbolically, the Berlin Wall fell. If you remember the moment, it was a situation where somebody made a mistake. That they put a comment. There was stuff going on in '89, as you may or may not recall, Glasnost and all of that. But in Berlin, they sent a note. There was pressure, and a lot of pressure, and so they had a press conference, and they put this guy in to run the press conference who was not used to doing press conferences. And they were asking questions, and he had some things to read, and he didn't understand what the orders were, and he kind of read them. And one of the news reporters said, "Wait a minute, are you saying that, based on what you just said, you're saying that the borders to Germany are open, that any German can leave at any time?" Okay, and that is not what the order said. He misread it. And the guy said something like, "Yeah, that's what I'm saying." And so then another reporter got up and said, wait a minute, are you sure what you're saying? And the guy said, yes, that's what I'm saying. And within about 25, 30 minutes, there were thousands of people at the borders. And they were like, suddenly they were, and the cameras were on and everybody was watching and it was a big deal. And they said, well, okay, I guess we're going to have to open the border. And they did. All right, we are in the book of Kings. 1 Kings chapter 1, beginning with verse 1. Now, Kings is a different, it's a very accurately named book. It is the book of Kings. It is all about the kings of Israel and Judah. So if you really want to know a story about the kings of Israel and Judah, you go to the book of Kings. There's no doubt what it's about. Okay, more specifically, the book of Kings is, the book of Samuel kind of, excuse me, the book of Samuel kind of is a justification and a story of how God kept his promise to David. And the book of Kings is really a story of how the nation of Israel blew it. Okay, why did the nation of Israel get taken over? Okay, and so in the book of Kings, as you see all of these different stories about these different kings, you'll see some great tales, and this is where you have the story of Elijah and Elisha and Ahab, and those are like the main, like the most time in the book of Kings. And Kings is the same, First and Second Kings it originally was a single book, but at the end of whenever the king dies, or somewhere in the description of all of the kings, they'll say something like, this king did what was right in the sight of the Lord, or this king did evil in the sight of the Lord. And by the end of the kingdom, near the end of the book of Kings, it's the majority of them did evil in the sight of the Lord, did evil in the sight of the Lord. And by the time Josiah came along, who to me was the greatest Israelite king, he was king of Judah. So there was Israel, was United Kingdom, and then it splits right after Solomon. We're not gonna stay with it that long, but it splits and it becomes the kingdom of Israel in the north and Judah in the south. But Judah has some good kings, some kings who follow the Lord. Hezekiah is one. Josiah is another one. Josiah is one. Again, to me, Josiah is like the greatest king, far greater than David was. And one of the things that I always liked about Josiah, maybe I'll just skip and we'll just talk about Josiah all day, is by the time Josiah becomes the king, they're doomed. It's like, okay, it's set in stone. You guys are going to get taken over. And Josiah says, the prophet tells him, this is the Stand translation, the prophet tells him, you guys are doomed because you failed to do this, this, and this. Josiah says, okay, I get it, I understand. And then he goes and he does the reforms anyway. He says, it doesn't matter that we're doomed, this is still the right thing to do, knowing that it's not going to work, knowing that it's not going to, this was the right thing to do, and he did it anyway. Whereas, you don't really see David doing that, but be that as it may. So the story of Kings, to get into the story of the Kings, you've got to take care of the last one, okay? David, okay? So the first two chapters of Kings basically is the end of David's reign and the ramifications about what happens at the end of David's reign. And it clearly starts, this is my first thing, the story of Kings clearly starts at the end of David's life. Because it says, when King David was very old. Okay, so there's no question that we're at the end of David's life. Now think about this. We haven't seen it for a while, but if you think about in the U.S. political universe, what happens when you've got a two-term president coming up on his 8th year? Okay, so you can think you had Bill Clinton, you had George W. Bush, you had Barack Obama. It doesn't matter who the president is. When the president gets into his 8th year, what happens to the staff members that are working for him? Generally you start seeing people jump ship left and right. Okay, because they know you don't want to wait until, January 20th when the new president comes in to be looking for a new job. Now, some do, but by and large, you start to see a huge exodus of people kind of going, okay, we need to figure out what we're going to do for the next 8 years. Okay. Not so much at the end of the first, at the fourth year, because there's the potential of being reelected. But regardless, and so you have this going on here. Okay, so we're I'm going to talk about a couple of people, and we can fault them all we want, but this is just people trying to guys got to pay the bills, right? Got to figure out what you're going to do when the next king. So we talk about David. So David is dying. Said when King David was very old, he could not keep warm, even when they put covers over him. Okay, so his attendants said to him, "Let us look for a young virgin to serve the king and take care of him. She can lie beside him, so that our lord the king may keep warm." Okay, so the story of Kings clearly starts at the end of David's life. His attendants say, "Let us look for a young virgin." In essence, they're looking for a concubine for David. They're looking for somebody who will sleep with him and keep him warm at night. All right. It's interesting, if you look in 1 Samuel 15, Saul is having some issues, and the same construction is used when they say, "Let us look for someone who can calm his mind," and they find David to play the music, kind of thing. They say, the king has a problem. Let us look for someone who can fix this problem. All right, and so they find this woman named Abishag, a Shunammite. Okay, and Shunammite is from the tribe of it's a town in Issachar, one of the 12 tribes. So they find this woman Abishag. Okay, then they searched throughout Israel for a beautiful young woman and found Abishag, a Shunammite, and brought her to the king. The woman was very beautiful. Okay, but the king had no sexual relations with her. Okay, so despite the woman being very beautiful, the text is clear to point out that David did not sleep with her. Okay, this is, kind of a little, I don't know if this is a subtle mention of, the last time David's attendants brought a very beautiful woman to him was 2 Samuel 11 with Bathsheba. This time he's like, okay, maybe he's just out of it. Maybe he's too old. I don't know what the deal is, but the text makes it very clear that he does not sleep with her. Okay. So the woman was very beautiful. She took care of the king and waited on him, but the king had no sexual relations with her. Meanwhile, Adonijah, David's fourth son, is going to make a play to be king. Okay, he wants to be king. Now, Adonijah, whose mother was Haggith, put himself forward and said, "I will be king." Okay, now let's review here. Who is David's first son? Does anybody remember? This is going to be on your test. No.
No, the guy that slept with Absalom.
It was Amnon.
Amnon. Amnon is David's first son. Now, the real trick question is, who is David's second son? Anybody remember who David's second son is? It's on your handout. Kileab, son of Abigail. And if you remember, we don't know anything about Kileab other than he's the son of Abigail. And so when we mentioned it, that there's a possibility that he could have died. There's a possibility that he was the Levirate son of Abigail's husband. I can't remember his name right now. What was Abigail's husband's name? Nabal. So it could be that because Nabal had died before Abigail had a child, then David becomes the Levirate marriage thing, so that her first child takes over for Nabal. So that's why he's out in Judah running Nabal's business. Okay, that's the possibility as well. We don't know. He just disappears. But that guy is the second son. The third son is who, Silas? Absalom. Absalom is the third son. Okay, and the fourth son is Amnon. Okay, so who's next in line for the king? Amnon. So if the king is very old, people are looking around going, "Hey, Amnon, This is going to be our next king. So his putting out that he's going to be the king isn't that strange. Okay, so again, whenever in England, if you follow England at all, what's going on in England and all of that kind of stuff, whenever Prince William does something, okay, or if there's ever an article about Prince William doing something, they always say in the article, they'll always say something, Prince William, the future king, because he's next in line. Okay, everybody knows it. Prince William is next in line. Okay, so the same thing. Amnon is next in line, and if in fact we do the right of primogeniture, which is where the oldest person gets the lion's share of stuff, then by all means, Amnon is going to be the next king. Okay, and it only makes sense that we need to start figuring what's going to happen in the next administration. Okay, so Amnon says, "All right, I need to kind of get everybody on board with this idea." So he has this great idea. He says, "I will be king." So he got chariots and horses ready with 50 men to run ahead of him. Does this sound familiar?
Is Amnon an alternate name
For
Adonijah?
did I say Amnon?
Adonijah. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, I just thought maybe.
And what I'm confused about is he said he's the first son.
Amnon is the first son.
But Adonijah is
The fourth son.
fourth. So it's not normal for him to say that.
He's the next in line.
He's the next one.
Amnon is dead. Abigail's out of the picture. Absalom is dead. He's the next in line. So, so he gets a chariot and 50 horses to run ahead of him. Okay, again, does that sound familiar? It should, because that's what Absalom did. So he's going, you know what? Hey, it worked for Absalom. It didn't end well, but it worked for Absalom. I'm going to get this chariot. I'm going to get 50 men to run ahead of me. So now I know what I need to, when I'm going to become the next whatever, governor of Illinois. Who knows? We get a chariot, 50 men to run ahead of me. And then it says, his father had never rebuked him by asking, why do you behave as you do? He was also very handsome and was born next after Absalom. Okay, so again, we're sounding a lot like Absalom here. What was said about Absalom? He was very good looking. Okay, and now here Adonijah saying the same thing. Okay, very good looking guy. His father never rebuked him. Okay, again, we've talked about how David was not good with his family. Okay, he never said anything. Now, why? What would David need to have said? What should David have said to Adonijah? Maybe something along the line of, you're not going to be the next king. Okay, because if you remember when we talked about 2 Samuel 11 and 2 Samuel 12, when Nathan comes in, thou art the man, and all of that with Bathsheba, that there are indications then, based on what Nathan says, that it's clear that Bathsheba's next child is the one that's going to be the king. Okay, so the first child of the first child of David and Bathsheba dies. Remember that story. The second child, anybody know the name of the second child? Solomon. Okay, so there's indications there in 2 Samuel 12 that Nathan has told David, or maybe David has decided that Solomon is going to be the king after David. Now we're going to find out a little more about that as we go on. Okay, but meanwhile, nobody seems to have told this to Adonijah, nor has anyone made this public, that Adonijah is not going to be the king, that Solomon is going to be the next king. Okay, so he's also very handsome and was born next after Absalom. So let's review Amnon. He gets a chariot. Per the NIV, David never rebuked him. Sound familiar? I should say yes. Okay. Adonijah conferred with Joab, son of Zeruiah, and with Abiathar the priest, and they gave him their support. So again, Joab is just, hey, I gotta pay the bills here. Abiathar, and these are two guys that have done service to David. So this isn't a betrayal. I don't see this as a betrayal of David as much as maybe they don't know. Maybe they're just courting favor, because again, there's a lot of this palace intrigue stuff going on. they're just kind of setting up their life, what's going to happen after David's death, which I think at this point, they're probably kind of wondering each day, okay, is he still alive? Is he still with us? Maybe he is, maybe he's not. Okay. But so let's see. Adonijah recruits Joab and Abiathar the priest. And there's a couple of references there where Joab and Abiathar are significant for David. But he does not get Zadok the priest, who we've run into before in, let's see, 2 Samuel 20, 2 Samuel 20, 25, when David is listing his priests. The second time David gets his cabinet mentioned, it says Zadok and Abiathar were the priests. So Abiathar, one of the priests of David, goes with Joab. Zadok does not go with Adonijah. Okay. So he gets these two guys, but he doesn't get Zadok. He doesn't get Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, Nathan the prophet, Shimei and Rei, and David's special guard did not join Adonijah. So he gets a couple of heavy hitters, but not a lot. So he's bringing up these endorsements, and it could be he doesn't get Nathan. Okay, now this is interesting because Nathan is the one that had talked to David after his sin with Bathsheba. Okay, so he's lining these people up. It says Adonijah, verse 9. Adonijah then sacrificed sheep, cattle, and fattened calves at the stone of Zoheleth near Enrogel. He invited all his brothers, the king's son, and all the royal officials of Judah. But he did not invite Nathan the prophet, or Benaiah, or the special guard, or his brother Solomon. Okay, now that kind of suggests that he knows something about Solomon. He knows that, why not include Solomon? Okay, now it could be that Solomon is like the favorite child, sort of like Joseph was the favorite child, and they don't want to deal with him. But he throws a party. So again, compare this to 2 Samuel 13, where Absalom throws a party. Okay, 2 Samuel 15 again. So he throws a party, which is significant for who is invited and who is not. So the ones that are on his side, he invites to this party. He brings all of his brothers except for Solomon. Now he's the oldest. Okay, so that's everything's great. Everything is normal. Everything looks okay. But I think there's a very clear picture that he's trying to draw here, that he's the oldest, he's the heir apparent, he's got all of these, he's got Joab there, he's got one of the priests there, he's got all of his brothers there. Everybody is looking at him and saying, okay, he's the next in line, he's the next in line, kind of thing. Everybody kind of knows that, and I think that's sort of the unspoken. It doesn't say it specifically, but I think that's pretty clear what's happening here. Then Nathan asked Bathsheba, Solomon's mother. Now Bathsheba speaks. This is kind of interesting because we have not heard from Bathsheba at all, other than a message she sends to David that says, I am with child. Okay, in the book of David and in the book of Samuel, that's all we hear Bathsheba say. Now we hear her talking a lot in these two chapters. Okay, so Nathan asked Bathsheba, Solomon's mother, have you not heard that Adonijah the son of Haggith has become king, and our Lord David knows nothing about it? Okay, now again, this is Nathan is trying to stir something up here. Okay, so has Adonijah become king? No. Okay, he's trying to stir something up, and again, this is just what he said because he's trying to get a response out of Bathsheba because Nathan knows that Solomon is supposed to be the next king. Okay, so Nathan, who knows a conspiracy when he sees one, goes to Bathsheba. Nathan suggests that Bathsheba has no idea what is going on. And in verse 12, he says, now then, let me advise you how you can save your own life and the life of your son Solomon. Okay, because I think Nathan, realizes that, the killing off of all of the brothers is not an unusual thing once somebody becomes king. Okay, all of these other heirs to the throne. I mean, I think we talked about it when I had been reading a book about the Ottoman Empire. And in the Ottoman Empire, it was a fairly common thing that, and this was going back, quite some time, that once somebody becomes king, that all of the other heirs to the throne would mysteriously die under mysterious circumstances, or not so mysterious circumstances. And certainly somebody who had reason to believe, or people had reason to believe, was the one that the Lord wanted to be the next king, Solomon. Okay, so Nathan realizes, hey, this isn't going to end well for Solomon if we let it go on. Okay, so go into King David and say to him, my lord the king, did you not swear to me your servant, surely Solomon your son shall be king after me, and he will sit on my throne? Now, we don't have a record of this in Samuel. We are just trusting that Nathan is being accurate, because when if David didn't say this, when Bathsheba goes in, he would say, well, no, I never said that. Yes?
Is there a time, do Solomon and, not Solomon, Samuel and Nathan overlap, or are they totally separate? Because I know Samuel anointed.
In the text, they're totally separate. Now, whether they knew each other or how old the one was, I don't know.
There can be more than one prophet.
Yes, there is more than one prophet. There's Nathan and there's Gad. There's another prophet involved here. So go into King David and say to him, my lord the king, did you not swear to me your servant, surely Solomon shall be king after me, and he will sit on my throne? Why then has Adonijah become king? Okay, so he says, now Nathan is orchestrating this. He says, now go into David and say this. Okay, and David is going to realize. So again, now this is, to me, there's indications in Samuel we talked about that Nathan knows that Solomon is going to be the king, or he knows that David wants Solomon to be the king. Okay, so and then he says, while you are still there talking to the king, I will come in and add my word to what you have said. Okay, so this is how we're going to do it. You're going to go in, you're going to start talking, and while you're talking, I'm going to walk in and go, oh, what a coincidence. Bathsheba, you're here. Okay, so Bathsheba went in to see the aged king in his room, where Abishag the Shunammite was attending him. Okay, so that's an interesting dynamic. Here comes Bathsheba in to see the aged king, and there's the very beautiful young woman that's attending him. Okay, Bathsheba bowed down, prostrating herself before the king. What is it you want? The king asked. She said to him, my lord, you yourself swore to me, your servant, by the Lord your God, Solomon your son shall be king after me, and he will sit on my throne. Okay, so she's actually more forceful than what, Nathan says, go in there and ask. Bathsheba goes in and just says, hey, you said this. Okay. But now Adonijah has become king, and you, my lord the king, do not know about it. Okay. Now, why doesn't? Because he's very old. He can't get warm. He's just sitting there. He's got this woman feeding him, So, I mean, he's still mentally aware, but he's not paying any attention to what's going on outside of his chamber there. But now Adonijah has become king, and you, my lord, do not know about it. He has sacrificed great numbers of cattle, fattened calves, and sheep, and has invited all the king's son, Abiathar the priest, and Joab the commander of the army, but he has not invited Solomon, your servant. Okay, he's excluded Solomon. My lord the king. Now this is pretty accurate, right? This is what's going on. He's telling him. Okay. But verse 20, my lord the king, the eyes of all Israel on you, to learn from you who will sit on the throne of my lord the king after him. Now this tells you something about the way the kingdom was working there. Okay, so it wasn't a given that the oldest living son would become the king. Okay, so it's not a given. This is how it's going to be, that the king kind of names his successor. Okay, or they know that the king can change that rule. So if the king doesn't want Adonijah to become the king, there's something that he can do. Okay, and or maybe it's the only thing missing from Adonijah's self-coronation is David saying, this is going to be the king after me. Okay. So says, my lord the king, and the eyes of all Israel are on you to learn from you who will sit on the throne of my lord the king after him. So maybe the point here is Adonijah is trying to start a groundswell, kind of start a movement. He wants everybody to know that he had this big party where he was in charge of this big party and all of the powers that be were there. And everybody was kind of going, oh, Adonijah, you're going to be a great king. You're going to be a great king. There's 50 guys just like Absalom. And, you know, maybe Adonijah made a speech at this and say, here's what the country needs to do, et cetera, et cetera. You know, that kind of stuff. You know, it's sort of like, you know, when it comes up to presidential time, you know, presidential primaries and all of that, suddenly people like, I don't know, governors of Illinois suddenly see a need to go make speeches in New Hampshire. Like, why? You know, well, you suddenly see all of these politicians making these odd trips to New Hampshire and Iowa. Like, you know, oh, no, I have no presidential ambitions. I just really feel I need to address issues in New Hampshire. You know, there's 49 other states to choose from, not to mention your own, right? But why does the governor of any state need to go to New Hampshire to talk about what foreign policy should be? Okay, again, it's one of these fictions that oh no, he has no presidential ambitions. Is he in New Hampshire? Yes. End of story. Nobody goes to New Hampshire unless they're running for president, period. Now, again, I love people from New Hampshire. My mother grew up in New Hampshire. Nobody goes to New Hampshire unless they're running for president. But, or Iowa. Come on, Iowa? Have you ever been to Iowa? I'm kidding. My sister used to live in Iowa. But be that as it may. So he's doing this sort of a moment, and he knows that the word is going to get out. Adonijah knows that the word is going to get out, and he's trying to create this groundswell where people are, long live King Adonijah, long live King Adonijah. We've seen a few Shakespeare plays in our day, and one of them is Richard III, which is a great play, and we saw it once with in Michigan with the Royal Shakespeare Company doing it. So they came over to the U.S. and they were doing Richard III was one of their plays, and there's a scene in the play where Richard has orchestrated his, you know, the way the play puts it, you know, he's taking care of the, well, I guess the Princes in the Tower comes later, but he gets rid of all of the opposition, and he kind of sets the whole thing up where the people are going to come and beg Richard to become the king. And so the way they were playing it at this particular production is you know, he's up there on a stage, you know, and the people there's a crowd of people, and they're begging him to become king, and he's no, I can't do it. Then he comes back with something like, I'm not, my heart is not made of stone, or something like that. Okay, maybe. And so what the actors were doing, so there's like 20 of them on the stage, and they all start chanting, long live King Richard, long live King Richard, right? Because they want him to, you know, this is in the play. But then the actors turn to the crowd. Okay, kind of long live King Richard, long live King Richard. And so there's Debbie and I cheering on this guy who's going to turn out to be a murderous guy. Right? Long live King Richard. Kind of, you know, so that's maybe what Adonijah is kind of hoping, that there's going to be this groundswell of support, and it's going to happen. And if nobody says anything, if nobody says it's not going to happen, then it's going to happen. Does that understand what I'm saying there? It's like, okay, it's going to become such a groundswell of emotion that he's going to be powerless to stop it. Okay, and this is what Bathsheba is telling David. It's like, David, listen, man, you're the only one that can stop this now. You need to say something. You need to say who's going to be the king. Okay, so my lord the king, the eyes of Israel. Otherwise, as soon as my lord the king is laid to rest with his ancestors, I and my son Solomon will be treated as criminals. And when you're a criminal and in danger of taking over the kingdom, what generally tends to happen is you tend to end up dead. Okay, so again, that's the, you know, this is the, and then she says in verse 22, or the author says, while she was still speaking with the king, Nathan the prophet arrived, and the king was told, Nathan the prophet is here. So he went before the king and bowed with his face to the ground. Now, Nathan who of course has no idea what. Now Nathan walks in, Bathsheba's there, David's there, Abishag is there. Okay, all of this crowd is here. Nathan walks in. Of course, he has no idea what's going on. No idea what's going on. He says, "Have you, my lord the king, declared that Adonijah shall be king after you, and that he will sit on your throne? Was this your idea?" Just, maybe Nathan is just, "Hey, I'm just checking, David, because if it's your idea, great, we can run with it. But, today he has gone down and sacrificed great numbers of cattle, fattened calves, and sheep. He has invited all the king's sons, the commanders of the army, and Abiathar the priest. Right now, they are eating and drinking with him and saying, 'Long live King Adonijah.'" So there it is. And David is like, and Nathan's like, did you plan it? Are you aware of this? Is this, because, you didn't tell me. I didn't get the memo. I wasn't in the loop on this. Did you tell me about this? Okay. Right now, but me, your servant, and Zadok the priest, and Benaiah son of Jehoiada, and your servant Solomon, he did not invite. Now think of what this is doing. Now David could be hearing Bathsheba and thinking, okay, this is just a hysterical woman in here. She's just protecting her son. She's just being the helicopter parent. You're just making stuff up. But now suddenly here comes the prophet who says pretty much exactly the same thing. It's almost like it was planned, okay, which it was, okay. Comes in and says, "Hey, do you know about this? Okay. Is this something my lord the king has done without letting his servants know who should sit on the throne of my lord the king after him? Okay, was this your plan? Why didn't you tell us?" Okay, so let's see. Nathan has a plan. "You, Bathsheba, start, I will follow." Bathsheba makes these points. "You, David, said that Solomon would be king after you. Adonijah has claimed that role, and you are clueless. Okay, Israel is waiting for you, David, to clarify who is the next king. Say something quickly, or at your passing we will be killed." Per the plan, 1 Kings 1:14, Nathan then arrives. Nathan asks about Adonijah's claiming the kingdom. "Is this your plan?" You're David. "Is this your plan, David?" He, Adonijah, sure seems to think it is. Okay. Fortunately, David sets things straight. Oh, actually, then in verse 28, then King David said, "Call in Bathsheba." So apparently Bathsheba had left the room. So she came into the king's presence and stood before him. The king then took an oath. Now this oath is in front of Bathsheba. It's in front of Nathan, Abishag, I would assume. "As surely as the Lord lives, who has delivered me out of every trouble." And again, that "as surely as the Lord lives," that is a structure for oaths in in these historical books. It says, "As surely as the Lord lives, I will carry out, who has delivered me, I will surely carry out this very day what I swore to you by the Lord, the God of Israel. Solomon your son shall be king after me, and he will sit on my throne in my place." Okay. David sets things straight. Solomon will be the king in my place. Okay. Now, if you turn over the thing, you see what he's saying is not after his death, right now. So Adonijah is thinking that once David dies, he will become the king. David is essentially saying, you know what? I'm going to abdicate. I'm going to step down. Solomon will become the king. Now. Okay. Then he says, King David said, "Call in Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah son of Jehoiada." When they came before the king, he said to them, "Take your Lord's servants with you and have Solomon my son mount my own mule and take him down to Gihon," which is an area around the outside of Jerusalem. So David says, put Solomon on the royal mule. Okay, and kind of sound like the triumphal entry. Sort of put him on the mule and carry him in this procession. Okay, and proclaim him king. King David said, okay, where was I? "Take your Lord's servants with you and have Solomon my son mount my own mule and take him down to Gihon. There have Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet anoint him king over Israel. Blow the trumpet and shout, 'Long live King Solomon.' Then you are to go up with him, and he is to come and sit on my throne and reign in my place. I have appointed him ruler over Israel and Judah. Okay. Now I'm guessing that Solomon is, I don't know how old Solomon is at this point. That's an interesting question. Is he a teenager? I mean, he's older because very soon he's going to have some conversations with people. Okay. I have appointed him ruler over Israel. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, answered the king, Amen. May the Lord, the God of my lord the king, so declare it. As the Lord was with my lord the king, so may he be with Solomon, to make his throne even greater than the throne of my lord King David. So Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, Benaiah son of Jehoiada, the Kerethites and the Pelethites went down and had Solomon mount King David's mule, and they escorted him to Gihon. Zadok the priest took the horn of oil from the sacred tent and anointed Solomon. So again, this is something that Adonijah had not done. So David's, David understands or what needs to be done. Then they sounded the trumpet, and all the people shouted, Long live King Solomon. And all the people went up after him, playing pipes and rejoicing greatly, so that the ground shook with the sound. Now, this all takes place over a fairly short period of time, 1 or 2 days. Okay, this whole thing happens very quickly. Okay, we know that because Adonijah's party is still going on. Okay, so a party, a feast could have been a multiple day event, 2 or 3, 4, 7 days, as long as 7 days. But it's all within this time period because Adonijah and Joab and Abiathar and all the rest are still at the party. So Adonijah and all the guests who were with him heard it as they were finishing their feast. On hearing the sound of the trumpet, Joab asked, What's the meaning of all the noise in the city? Even as he was speaking, Jonathan, son of Abiathar the priest, arrived. Now, Jonathan, we've heard of before. This is not Jonathan, son of Saul. This is a different Jonathan. Jonathan is one of the messengers that went back and forth to David when Absalom was the king. Jonathan is one of the 2 guys that were hidden in the well that they poured the seeds over the top of. So again, these guys are all, they've done service to David, and they're just looking, what are we going to do during the next administration? Okay, but he says, and even as he was speaking, Jonathan, son of Abiathar the priest, arrived. Adonijah said, Come in. A worthy man like you must be bringing good news. Now, this is similar. Do you remember when David was waiting for the news for the battle with Absalom? And he sees somebody running, and he says, Oh, he's a good man. He must be bringing good news, kind of thing. And Jonathan, to his credit, says, Not at all, Jonathan answered. Our Lord King David has made Solomon king. The king has sent him with Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, Benaiah son of Jehoiada, the Kerethites and the Pelethites, and they have put him on the king's mule, and Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet have anointed him king at Gihon. From there they have gone up cheering, and the city resounds with it. That's the noise you hear. Okay. Moreover, Solomon has taken his seat on the royal throne. So Solomon is the king now. Right now. Okay. It's not a question of when David dies. Solomon is the king right now. Also, the royal officials have come to congratulate our Lord King David, saying, May your God make Solomon's name more famous than yours, and your throne and his throne greater than yours. And the king bowed in worship on his bed and said, Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, who has allowed my eyes to see a successor on my throne today. So here, even in this, David is still in his bed. Okay. So David does all of this from his bed. Okay. At this, all Adonijah's guests rose in alarm and dispersed. Well, wouldn't you? And like, we backed the wrong horse here, okay? So, I guess hearing this, Adonijah's guests rose in alarm and dispersed. I just love that picture of the breakup of that party. Hey, let's talk later. See you later, Adonijah. We'll do lunch. I'm out of here. Got to go. Oh, I forgot I've got an appointment. Got to go do something. Listen, it's been a great time. I'll see you later. Oh, all of these different people, just all the reasons maybe they just got up and ran. I don't know, kind of thing. But it's just sort of a kind of funny, because again, pardon me. Yeah. They're checking cameras. Anybody take pictures of us here, kind of thing? Nobody's writing anything down, right? But again, these guys are just, to a certain extent, this is David's fault because David hadn't made it clear to anyone what the succession was going to be. Okay, so now again, there's a certain amount of ambition involved as well. So I mean, Adonijah is not completely innocent, as we'll find out. He certainly knew. I think Adonijah knew that there was something different about Solomon, and he knew that he needed to get ahead of and he was trying to manipulate the system, lest Solomon get what should have been his. Okay, again, why is Solomon not invited? Okay, so at this, all Adonijah's guests rose in alarm and dispersed. But Adonijah, in fear of Solomon, okay, and rightly so, see, because now you think about it, Adonijah has already claimed the kingdom. Okay, and what does any king not like? Someone else claiming the kingdom. Okay, they just don't mix well. So Adonijah knows, okay, I'm in trouble. I gotta do something big. So he comes up with this great big gesture that's gonna win him back. Okay. At this, all Adonijah's guests, but Adonijah, in fear of Solomon, went and took hold of the horns of the altar. So he goes to the tabernacle, okay, because the temple is not built yet. He goes to the tabernacle. He goes to the outside. There's a big altar there with horns on the end, and he grabs hold of one. Okay, so he's like holding on for dear life. Okay, and we'll see this again. This kind of thing happens through this story. Then Solomon was told, Adonijah is afraid of King Solomon and is clinging to the horns of the altar. He says, "Let King Solomon swear to me today that he will not put his servant to death with the sword." Okay, so he's like, okay, no, I'm not. I'm not going to. I'm not leaving until you promise not to kill me. Kind of thing, trying to make Solomon, be the bad guy. Solomon could have just said, no, you know what, just go kill him. It wouldn't be the first time where somebody is killed in the temple area. Okay, but so Solomon replied. So again, so this is, Solomon is talking. This is Solomon's word. Solomon is clearly teenager or early 20ish, early adult. So Solomon replied, "If he shows himself to be worthy, not a hair of his head will fall to the ground. But if evil is found in him, he will die." So basically it says, all right, if you behave, you'll be fine. Nothing's going to happen. You'll be good. Okay. So Adonijah goes to the temple and grabs hold of the altar. Solomon says to Adonijah, "If you're worthy, you will not die." Then King Solomon sent men, and they brought him down from the altar. And Adonijah came and bowed down to King Solomon. And Solomon said, "Go to your home." Okay, so perhaps there's more to the conversation. Maybe it's just a matter of these guys are bringing Adonijah in and making him bow to Solomon to show who the king is. Okay, but he says, "Go to your home." Okay, well, we're not done with Adonijah, though. Okay, so this is why I said Adonijah, it's not, we're not done with him yet. So in chapter 2, David has a charge to give to Solomon. Okay, now this is, when the time drew near for David to die, he gave a charge to Solomon his son. Verse 2, "I am about to go the way of all the earth. So be strong, act like a man, and observe what the Lord your God requires." Okay, so that's be strong, act like a man, and obey what the Lord requires. Okay, and then he shares the Davidic covenant with him. He says, "Walk in obedience to him." This is what the Lord requires. "Walk in obedience to him and keep his decrees, his laws and regulations as written in the law of Moses. Do this so that you may prosper in all you do, and wherever you go, do this wherever you go, and that the Lord may keep his promise to me. If your descendants watch how they live, and if they walk faithfully before me with all their heart and soul, you will never fail to have a successor on the throne of Israel." Okay, so he's giving the Davidic covenant to again, the Davidic covenant comes in 2 Samuel 7, and he says to Solomon, if you He shares it, but he shares it as an if-then proposition. Okay? If you and your descendants will walk faithfully, then you will never fail to have a successor. Okay? Now, think about this for a second. Is that what the Davidic covenant says? Is this an accurate summary of the Davidic covenant? So if we look at 2 Samuel 7:11, kind of go back to what it, if I can find it. 7, beginning with verse 11. The Lord declares to you that the Lord himself will establish a house for you. When your days are over and you rest, I will raise up your offspring to succeed you, your own flesh and blood, and I will establish his kingdom, etc., etc. Then in verse 15, but my love will never be taken away from him. Okay, so the question is there anything conditional about the Davidic covenant? No. That's the thing that makes the Davidic covenant special. It's like this, you are going to have a successor on the throne. Okay? But when he gives to Solomon, he says, listen, if you have to behave to make sure that you have a successor on the throne. Okay, what's the difference? What's changed? Is David wrong here when he talks to Solomon? Yes. So David isn't wrong, but the Davidic covenant says David will have a successor, not Solomon. Now, there's going to be a Solomon covenant later. Okay, we won't get to that. But the Davidic covenant is to David. David has other sons. Okay, there's at least one of them that's hanging around an altar. Okay, but David has other sons. David has other offspring that could fulfill the Davidic covenant, and one of them will. David's charge to Solomon is like, listen, if you want to be the one, this is what you're going to have to do. Because if you're not, God will remove you, and one of my other sons' lines will take over, is essentially what he's saying. Okay? So David says, if your descendants watch how they live, and they walk faithfully before me with all their heart and soul, you will never fail to have a successor on the throne of Israel. But David has a few other, so key point, the Davidic covenant applies to David. David has other sons. But David has a few other scores to settle. Okay, this is kind of, I find this interesting. So David, he had some trouble dealing with some issues, some people. It says, verse 5, now you yourself know what Joab, son of Zeruiah, did to me, what he did to the two commanders of Israel's army, Abner, son of Ner, and Amasa, son of Jether. Okay, he killed them, shedding their blood in peacetime as if in battle, and with that blood he stained the belt around his waist and the sandals on his feet. Okay, if you remember, he was talking about they leaned over and he just killed a guy and the blood splattered on him, kind of thing. Deal with him according to your wisdom, but do not let his gray head go down to the grave in peace. Now, what's interesting here is Joab is probably about the same age or close in age. He's a cousin of David. No, he's younger. Zeruiah is David's sister, so he's a nephew. So he's slightly younger, but to keep track of all the family members here. Okay, but basically, Solomon, make sure that Joab doesn't die a natural death. Is essentially, take care of this score that I have to settle. Okay, and I wonder if he's reminding him. By the way, Joab was on, wanted Adonijah to be the king. Just saying, just throwing that out there, kind of stuff. So he says, but do not let his gray head go down in peace, but show kindness to the sons of Barzillai of Gilead, and let them be among those who eat at your table. They stood by me when I fled from your brother Absalom. You remember, this is where they were coming back, and the guy says, come back with me. And he says, and the guy says, I'm 80 years old. What's the point of my coming back? But take my, and he takes his son with. And so I'm guessing his son is part of the inner circle. I forget his name, Kiliam or something like that. He's back. He says, honor this guy. Okay, honor this guy, honor this family. They were good to me, kind of thing. So again, I don't know if that's a score to settle, maybe a debt to pay, kind of thing. But he says, and verse 8, remember you have with you Shimei, son of Gera, the Benjamite from Bahurim, who called down bitter curses on me the day I went into Mahanaim. When he came down to meet me at the Jordan, I swore to him by the Lord, I will not put you to death by the sword. Okay. So David has a few other scores to settle. Joab, do not let his gray head go down to the grave in peace. Show kindness to Barzillai. And then as far as Shimei goes, now in 2 Samuel 19, David's, Shimei kind of thinks he's going to die. And if you remember, Abishai, Joab's brother, is there with him. And this is one of those discussions where when David leaves Jerusalem because of Absalom, Shimei is there throwing down curses, and it's all your fault, you're getting what you deserve. And then when he comes back, Shimei is right at the head going, listen, sorry about that. Really, I'm sorry. And Abishai is there saying, why are you letting him get away with it? Why don't you kill him? Okay. And Shimei is kind of worried. David is in between Abishai and Shimei, and he says to Abishai, who made you the adversary? Who made you Satan? If you remember that discussion, that's where that Hasatan word is used. Who made you the adversary? And he says to Shimei, you're not going to die. You're not going to die. Okay. And there was probably more to the conversation, because here David says, listen, I said, I will not put you to the sword. I'm not going to kill you. Okay. So when he came down to meet me at the Jordan, I swore to him by the Lord, I will not put you to death by the sword. But now, do not consider him innocent. You are a man of wisdom. You will know what to do to him. Bring his gray head down to the grave in blood. So take care of Shimei, too. Like, can you imagine being the okay, I'm going to make you king, and I got two things. There's two people you need to go out there and basically kill. Okay. This is kind of thing. I mean, when there was an ongoing, the principal at the school, and there was an ongoing employee issue here at the school that was festering over the summer, kind of thing. And one of the things was like, hey, listen, you guys need to settle this. This needs to be settled, because I am not going to come in and say my first job is to get rid of this guy. Either keep the guy or get rid of him. Do one. I'm not going to do what David did to Solomon here. Bring his gray head down to the grave in blood. Then, verse 10, David rested with his ancestors and was buried in the city of David. He had reigned 40 years over Israel, 7 years in Hebron and 33 in Jerusalem. So Solomon sat on the throne of his father David, and his rule was firmly established. So David dies, 1 Kings 2:10. But all is not well in Jerusalem. So next week, I want to talk about the end of chapter 2, where David, the return of Adonijah. He's not gone. He's still there. So there's a couple of other things before Solomon is firmly established. Any questions? All right. Well, have a great day. Honey, thanks for coming.